Firstly, I think for me it's just about getting something on a page. I think sometimes it's called a shit first draft.
The first is making the title short and snappy, and my honours thesis was looking at sexual communication in male cancer survivors. I called that Let's Talk About Sex, Baby.
Just getting started, writing an academic article, whether it's a literature review or something like that, that can feel just like a mammoth task. Just getting some words down, because that's something I've really learned, is just not to expect the first draft to be perfect, because it very rarely is. Just get your stream of consciousness and your process of logic down, because that will really help set up the structure of what you're hoping to write.
It's just getting words on the page, and my first iteration, I would be so ashamed to show anybody. It's just, just basic thoughts flowing on a page, and then I just sort of keep finessing it from there.
And you just write to the best of your ability at that time, but you don't expect anybody else to look at it. It's just about getting your ideas down on the page. And then it kind of becomes something that you revisit.
Don't feel like you need to just write when you can have a big chunk of time. Often that just leaves you waiting until you can write, and then you just don't do it. 30 minutes a day, just a little bit, you can be surprised at how much you can get done.
When I want to write, I know I've got a lot of ideas in the back of my head, but it's really difficult for me to just start writing it out just like that. So what I do is I sort of conceptualize all of these different ideas on a big piece of paper and try and build connections between my ideas. And so that's how I start. I always start with the mind map.
My process for writing tends to involve kind of scripting out the overall framework, a skeleton for the paper from beginning to end. Thinking about key points for the introduction and discussion, sketching out the methodology and the findings, and then trying to write around those points so that I can create a coherent narrative.
So often when I'm working with, really big data sets or on really complex topics, I find it most helpful to really start with that analysis and start with the key piece of the paper and then work backwards and frame the rest of the paper from that. So instead of stepwise starting from introduction to methods, results, and discussion, really getting into the thick of what you're wanting to look at and what you're wanting to explore, and then drawing out the study background from there and drawing out the importance of the study from that analysis itself.
So now usually what I do is I look at the results. I want to get a firm understanding of what these findings mean. Then I take a look at the methodology. That's usually the easiest and quickest part of the paper to write. So I do that so it feels like I've got some momentum. And then I turn to the introduction and think about what is the story that I want to tell. But once I've got the introduction set, I turn to the discussion. This is where you bring it home. What do those findings really mean? How do we make sense of that? And importantly, what relevance does it have to people who are actually reading it?
I try to think of writing as a conversation. So I'm having conversations in my own mind when I'm writing, and often having conversations with co-authors, and there's a back and forth, not only in terms of the comments and the feedback on the paper, but in my own mind I'm sort of going through some hypothetical conversations and trying to get that on the page.
I've benefited from really amazing and supportive mentors at every level. So really drawing on people who are already well versed in academic writing and can really show you the ropes when you're first learning, because it really is a challenge and a unique skill set.
I'm always working with colleagues, and so what I do is I try to get a full product. We dive in and we're not critical of one another at all. And I'll say, feel free to modify as you like. I want this to be the best product. And it works. It works really well.